Hey y'all, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today is Ash Patel. Welcome, Ash.
Hey, how's it going, Adriana?
Not too bad. Where are you calling from today?
I am actually in Australia right now because I wanted to escape the Toronto winter early, and I feel like I've done it right in time.
Yeah, I think so. I think you caught it just like when the sun is setting way too early and the weather is just that special shade of blah.
Yes, just around Halloween times, it starts to hint at it's gonna get bad, and then by mid-November, we're already thinking, I need to get out of this place.
Yeah, I totally don't blame you. So how long are you in Australia for? Like the duration of winter?
Pretty much, I'm looking at
It's
somewhere around March,
jealous.
April.
That's awesome. So it's like summer for you all the time then because like you're going from summer to summer.
It has its downsides. I mean, it gets hot. It gets really hot in Australia, but it's a lot easier to deal with than minus 15 degrees or
Yeah,
worse,
I
right?
definitely agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I come from a tropical country and I have been living in Canada for 35 years and I still cannot get acclimated to the freaking cold.
Oh, yeah, about that. I noticed that your mascot for the pod is a capybara.
Yes, that's right. Which incidentally, I discovered capybaras as a result of Instagram. It wasn't even because of like, because I'm from Brazil originally. It wasn't even because, oh, I grew up with them and they're so cute and cuddly. No, it's like Instagram started showing me videos of these. I'm like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? And so I got like slightly obsessed and in High Park in Toronto, there's like a zoo and there are capybaras, and I went to see them in the summer, and they are just like they're glorious animals.
They look amazing.
Yeah, I would love to have one as a pet. I
I'm not sure if you can do that legally.
don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. That is a dream that will remain unfulfilled. All right. Well, before we get started with the meaty bits, I am going to subject you to some lightning round questions.
Sounds good.
All right,
I'm
let's get
ready.
started. Okay, first question. Are you a lefty or a righty?
Ambidextrous.
Ooh, that is very cool. I like that. I've always
But
wanted to
probably,
be ambidextrous.
yeah, but best if I don't write with my left hand. It's shocking, but it's doable.
Nice. That's very cool. Okay, next question. iPhone or Android?
I was an OG iPhone guy for the first two releases. So I'm talking way
Yeah.
back, like 2008 to
Yeah.
2010, somewhere around that time. And then
Yep.
Android right up until earlier last year. So for a good 12 years, Android only, and now iPhone only.
Oh, wow. That's quite the switch. Very cool. What made you switch back from Android to iPhone?
I think I just saw a whole bunch of people playing around with their iPhones, and I'm like, I want that. It's so slick. The UI UX, and I'm one of those UI UX nerds. It just
Yeah,
really
yeah.
struck me. I was like, oh, I need that. I need that in my life.
That is very cool. Yeah, I have to say I'm dazzled by the UI UX of the iPhone and just like the slickness of it. I wish that I wasn't one of those clumsy people who had like a naked iPhone, but I have to put a case on mine, unfortunately, and it makes me deeply sad. But yeah, if I didn't have a case, there'd be scratches.
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, next question. Do you prefer Mac, Linux, or Windows in your day-to-day life?
It's actually kind of a similar story to iPhone versus Android. It was Windows right up until last year, and all of a sudden, a switch to Mac. And a lot of my friends are going, dude, you used to really hate on Apple. And I never did, but they assumed I did because I always would talk about Windows and Android, and
Yeah,
they all
yeah.
talked about Apple stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, there you go.
And now you're a convert. Yeah, I was telling someone the other day that like I went years and years Windows only. I'm like Apple, blah. And like we bought a Mac. It was like a Mac Mini, one of the early Mac Minis, kind of as like an experiment. Use it as a media server, and I'm like, what is this fresh hell? And then I decided to buy myself like a MacBook Pro just for funsies, and I just bought myself this like powerful like Intel Core i7 machine, which was like at the time state of the art, and I ditched my Core i7 machine for the dinkier MacBook because I was like, this thing is just glorious.
I don't know what they do, but there's some magic behind it.
There is. I'm also sold because of like the Linuxy-ish kernel, close enough to Linux that I feel like I can do cool shit. And I don't know. I cannot get behind PowerShell. I
Yeah.
don't even want to try. I worked at a window shop once, and they were like PowerShell this, PowerShell that, and I installed Windows Subsystem for Linux as like my first thing, and I'm like, I don't ever want to touch PowerShell. I'm sorry, PowerShell lovers.
I'm going to be with you on that, Adriana. Let's just stick with the terminal that comes on Mac. It's so much
Right?
easier than using PowerShell.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next question. What's your favorite programming language?
Ooh, I just realized that my skills are very out of date, so I'm just gonna stick with HTML and see. That's not even a programming language. HTML and
Awesome.
CSS? No, I would say JavaScript because it's elegant. That's the only real programming language I know, and my skills are really out of date, and I'm learning all the stuff that's in ES6. I think that's the latest in JavaScript, and it's kind of hard because I've been in the management track for the last I'm not going to mention how many years, but it's been a long time, and coming back to all this stuff, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really have fallen behind.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
wild how it changes, right?
so let's just say when I was playing around with JavaScript, it was this newfangled thing that you could do animations with when you had HTML with frames. So kind of gives you I bet people don't even know what frames are nowadays.
I still remember frames. You
Yeah,
were in good company. Yeah, that's probably around the time I looked at JavaScript. I'm like, not for me. Bye bye.
it was pretty messy, but fun. Fun.
I admire the fact that so many beautiful UI things come out of JavaScript, but I am not one of those people who can make those things happen, and I have made my peace with that.
I am trying to make my peace with it, but I just keep on going back and trying to learn it and try and think one day I could maybe become a front end developer of some form and create cool apps. But
Yeah,
maybe I'll just stick around with infra stuff and deep dive into that.
fair enough.
Maybe I should do that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little biased, but I do like the infra stuff. So
Yeah, we're both just a little bit biased.
just a tad, right? Okay, next question. Do you prefer dev or ops?
Ooh, ops. This is a tricky question. I feel like I'm gonna fail if I
No
say
wrong
either.
answers. There are no wrong answers here.
I like DevOps. That's the right answer, isn't it?
You know what? A lot of people have given the DevOps answer. So, like I said, no wrong answers. Okay, next
Great.
question. Controversial one. JSON or YAML?
Oh, jeez. JSON.
Cool.
I Yeah. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. And on a similarly controversial vein, and you can blame one of my recent guests for bringing this up, spaces or tabs.
Um, that's going to be a huge that you got to clear out. So, but that's all right. Spaces? Is this a trick question again?
No, 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 no wrong answers. Just personal preference.
No, actually, I like tabs. I like tabs. I should say tabs.
All
I know
right.
that's the yeah.
I think that's the worst of it. Yeah. Two more questions. They're not as they're not as controversial. Do you prefer to consume content through text or video?
It depends on my mood on the day, but lately it's been a lot of video.
All right.
Hmm.
Cool. And then final question: what is your superpower?
What is my superpower?
Yeah.
As of late, it's being infinitely patient. People just get mind blown by how patient I am with things. They get frustrated. I'm like, it's cool. Just hang around. We'll wait for 3 hours for the DMV guy to sort things out for us.
I really
Yeah.
like that. I wish I had patience like that. I get impatient waiting in line. Like if it's like three people deep, I'm like, come on, move. So yeah, hats off to you for your patience. I think we all need a little more patience and a little more zenness. I think especially as we get older, I think we realize like, why are we getting so worked up over this crap?
Funnily enough, from what I've heard, the older we get, the less patient we become.
Oh no, oh no. It means it's gonna get worse for me.
No, I mean, if you consciously practice meditating and being present and all these kinds of oh, this is not a fun podcast. Whoops. Yeah. Uh, whoops.
I have tried. I have tried. I've tried the mindfulness thing and my mind always wanders. I don't know how people manage. Hats off to people who can do that. I feel like I start like thinking about all the things that I need to do while I'm doing this mindfulness exercise. And then I'm like, shit, I got to get out my phone and write this down.
I'm gonna just go a little bit off tangent for a second, and
Sure.
I have a tip for that. I am one of those people as well. If you got me to sit still and try and meditate or just be mindful, etc., I cannot do it. But then I found if I just did beginners yoga for a while,
Yeah,
it's a lot easier to get into that meditative state. So that's my
that is true.
pro slash amateur, very much amateur tip actually for
You know
people.
what?
Yeah, want to
That
get
is
into
a
it.
really good tip because like yoga is the one time where I can like chill more because I'm so like caught up trying to like stay like trying to do the poses and trying to do the breathing and I always do the opposite of what they say. When they say breathe out, I have the urge to breathe in and vice versa. It keeps
I
my mind
yeah,
occupied though.
kind of guilty of doing the same thing. So you're in good company or is it bad company? I'm still not sure.
Although I am told that yoga is like a very personal practice and how you do it is how you do it. So maybe we're doing all right.
Yeah, yeah. I'm completely with you on that.
Awesome. All right. Well, now that we've done our like meditative, contemplative, philosophical segment, let's get into the meaty bits. So we were chatting earlier about just being in the corporate world because that's something that you and I both have in common. Careers, long careers in the corporate world. So
Mhm.
why don't you share like actually how you got your start in the corporate world and how it's been?
So I started off as a system admin way back. So remember we're talking about HTML with frames, kind of gives you a reference point as to when we're talking about that. Um, and then it just was a transition into I did a degree in research science. It was a research science oriented degree.
Hmm.
So the company I was working at was handling the computer systems for said, "Hey, do this degree, we'll get you a management job, and then sky's the limit." So I thought, okay, let's try this out, and I did it. And they were right. Got on the management track. Started off managing one place, then a few sites, and then I became director of operations. So I finished up last year as a director of operations, responsible for people, finance, property, oh, and technology. That's kind of a useful thing to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Technology was important because it was increasingly become a part of a healthcare environment, which is where I was based. And it was difficult. And that's where I got into thinking about reliability and essentially operational stuff after a long time, and just really just dug into that. But that's why it's the thing for me now, because I think that was the most interesting part of my work for me.
Having like dealing with the reliability of the systems.
Dealing with pretty much any of the software operation side of things, and reliability was a problem for us.
Right, right, right.
Software reliability was a problem, so I made it a priority area. I started blogging on it, and even after finishing up, I've just continued on it, um, while I retrain to see if I can become a ninja JavaScript developer one day.
Awesome. So how would you say, like, what would you see as like the biggest leap? Is it a leap? What's the biggest difference in going from like a manager to a director in terms of like job responsibilities, the way you think? Like,
So that's probably the first taste of seniority in terms of you thinking you're a senior manager, which I
yeah.
always had people tell me, "Oh, you're the senior manager in the company," which is right.
Hmm.
But that also means the entire C-suite is kind of looking down on you and just telling you what to do more so than ever before, which was
Yeah.
always fun. But then you're also getting managed up. I'm sure you've heard of people trying to learning about managing up, so managing
Hmm.
their managers. So I had a lot of people trying to do that with me, which was always fun to navigate. So you're dealing with both ends. In terms of responsibilities, it's more broad. Um, for me, it was just covering a lot of areas that I didn't have an interest in, but it just came under my purview. Uh, Once again, technology was the most interesting part.
It is the fun stuff.
Uh, do you want me to deep dive a little bit more into the responsibilities?
Yeah, I want to go back to what you were saying earlier about managing up, and if you could explain that to folks in our audience who aren't necessarily familiar with the term, because I think that's kind of an interesting thing, because you're right that there's a lot of advice given to folks in management positions, or even individual contributors manage up. So what is that? What does that mean?
So I cannot give a textbook definition on this. I'm really gonna give my perspective on how
Yeah,
people
yeah,
were trying to do
perfect.
it with me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a lot of, you can tell that people were getting advice from somewhere else. Maybe someone who was telling them exactly to manage up, or they were just naturally good at it, and they would essentially try and guide decision making toward a favorable outcome for them,
Right.
and essentially something that would position them as someone who is a valuable individual contributor, which is not a bad thing.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes, actually, a lot of times, it came at the expense of their team, which is when things go wrong in managing up. So, managing up is not a bad thing necessarily, um, but it can eventually turn into a hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me kind of thing. And then
Right.
trying to just steer the director or steer your boss towards um, what essentially only it seems like you're the only person who can do it. I think that's
Right.
not so much of a thing in tech, but people are learning and managing up, and I hope they do it the right way.
Yeah, because I guess if it comes off, then you kind of feel like you're being used, right?
Yeah, about 9 times out of 10, it definitely felt like that.
Yeah, because I mean, I can definitely see the benefits of managing up because, sometimes like your direct reports might have certain insights that you might not have. So they bring certain issues to the forefront. And so you have like that visibility. But then when you're when you're being blatantly used so that they can, work on their agenda, then that feels a little bit ickier, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's one piece of advice I'd give to a manager who realizes they're being managed up on. Actually, create barriers to it. Like, don't
Mm.
block people, but actually have systems or mental systems or mental models in place to say, hey, look, I need to rationally process whatever's coming into me. Because a lot of times we don't realize it. We're so busy. We've got teams to manage. We've got reviews to do. We've dealing with our bosses, ourselves. We get caught up in all of this, and it's not easy to think things through. So that's one thing I'd say to people. Maybe we can go back to that whole you got to meditate regularly, or maybe just slow down and think
Yeah.
about things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like for me, I tend to be, unfortunately, at times impulsive, especially when it comes to like getting like very like getting emails or Slack messages or whatever that tend to like get me riled up. And one thing that I did learn in the last several years was to like don't be tempted to respond right away. Sit back, let it soak, and then respond. And you'll do so with a much, much clearer head.
I love the snooze function on Gmail. Everything gets snoozed for a
Oh,
week
yeah, yeah,
later.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It does you a great service rather than hinder. So I definitely appreciate those features, like realizing that you don't have to, that not everything is like something that you have to address right away, not everything is an emergency, is very liberating.
Absolutely. And I think that can seg us on to another thing that I think even individual contributors can benefit from in that you have to manage your cognitive load. You
Yeah,
have to be aware of it. It's something you have to consciously deal with. It's not something that's just going to happen naturally. That app that says it's going to reduce your mental burden, it's not going to do that automatically. You have to be involved in it too.
yeah, yeah, and that's a huge takeaway. Like only you can help you. It sounds super cliche, but it is absolutely true. Until you take the reins and start putting in like guardrails in your own life, people, things, circumstances are going to take advantage of you, and then that leads to burnout.
Exactly. Just like what SREs do in putting out guardrails, they set around guardrails for developers to not cause um, P0, P1, high severity incidents. It's very important that you create guardrails around your work as well so that you don't fall out and then you get stuck and you start creating symptoms of burnout.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Now, one thing that I wanted to circle back on is I think you'd mentioned when you're talking about like role as a director, like you're kind of under the microscope of the C-suite. And I used to always think the higher up you got in your career, the more influence and I guess the more freedom you had. But then I was at a position myself where I was at a company where they were like grooming me to be a director, and the my boss at the time, he said, like the higher up you move, the more you can't just think about like what you want, you have to also think about what the company wants, and which is very fair. I mean, companies got to make money and all that, but then for me that was kind of a turnoff. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think I want to pursue this. How so what's your point of view, what's your experience with that?
For me, it was a little simpler because we were in the healthcare space. So we
Yeah,
had boundaries. You have very strict boundaries around how far you can take it in terms of the company wants something commercially, but then that always gets compared to what is ethical.
yeah,
which is not a boundary that 99% of companies they don't have it because they don't have this regulated boundary. And even regulated industries, um, it's it's not as much of an equation involving are we doing the right thing by our customers necessarily. It's an important thing to consider, especially um, as things get more competitive. And now I'm probably going to talk about another topic that it won't make sense to a lot of your listeners. ESG is now a big thing. So, environment, sustainability, governance. So, governance is a big
Hmm.
part in how a company is treated or looked at by investors, by the public
Hmm.
in general. So, you need to get that right. And if you don't, that is asking for trouble. So, had we always had boundaries for, yeah, the company wants this, but then we have to do the right thing by the customer or
Right.
the client, the patient, etc.
Yeah, which I guess in some ways that makes it easier, right? Because like you are bound by doing right by the patient, rather than it's not just a, a big old corporate interest.
Yeah, exactly. In some ways it made it easier, in some ways it was difficult, but we could go on about that for a while. So yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, I think you mentioned when you're talking about like your role as a director, you also mentioned like obviously reliability was an aspect, like the technology side of things, but then there's all other aspects too, right? Because you have to be concerned with like budgeting and whatnot. Like what talk about some of these aspects, the non techie aspects of the job, and were they something that you enjoyed?
Looking at balance sheets is never fun, especially when you need to
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I have to agree with you.
yeah, especially when you have to look at it with what do they say? Fine toothed comb, or something like that.
Yeah, fine tooth comb. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there were a lot of old school sayings in my space, as you can
yeah.
imagine. We need to look at this with a fine comb, or whatever they used to say. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of things that would really not interest people who are just interested in being individual contributors. Even people who want to be managers and just be people managers, there's a lot of other stuff that you have to do. Um, so yeah, dealing with P&Ls, dealing with paperwork, reading through contracts, actually reading through contracts,
Right, right. Which is
because
not fun on a
yeah,
good day.
yeah, like the lawyer actually wants you to pay attention. They don't want you to just be there and sign at the end.
Yeah, yeah,
Generally,
yeah. Which makes sense, especially if you're, responsible for the purchase of some like massive like system or whatever. You definitely want to make sure that it's not just a stamp of approval, right?
exactly. Oh, we had stamps, by the way, like actual physical stamps that you actually jam into an ink pad.
Ooh, fun.
Real old school, right?
That is very old school. So did I mean, for me personally, I would find like that is a very stressful like burden to carry. How did you feel about that? Like, did you feel like stressed and also like in awe of like, ooh, I just made this decision?
The funny thing is that when you're there, or when I was there, I never felt that that's not what my cognitive process was. But
Yeah.
obviously it was there somewhere in the background, because now I'm going, wow, I was really highly strung. And even friends I see, like I've seen months later after just finishing up, they're like, oh wow, is this you? You're like relaxed. And I'm saying, wait, I wasn't relaxed before for all this time? And they're like, oh, no, no, you were good. You were good. Like backtracking.
Yeah, so I guess it speaks to the intensity of that kind of rule. That's all actually has always been a bit of a turnoff for me as well, is like the intensity. Like, I mean, work is intense normally, and then I think when you get to like higher up positions, like the responsibilities are so big, lofty.
Yeah, I'd say to people, don't get attracted by an increase in salary, because if that's what you're doing it for, yeah, jeez, that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. No, fair enough, fair enough. So what made you like decide, okay, I'm done with this directorship thing, like time
Well,
for a change?
about 3 years ago, a certain global event occurred, and it made a lot of people reassess what they were doing. That, I'd been thinking about it for a while. Like,
Yeah.
is this what I want to do? Is this the path I want to take on, like, ongoing? And even though I've dated myself with saying HTML had frames, I still feel like I'm relatively young to make a shift into something else. And I love the tech space, which is why I'm trying to get deeper into programming. And I think it was just that I think the stars just aligned. It was the right time, and I just did it last year.
Awesome.
Mm.
And so what are you doing now? Like you've mentioned that you're getting deeper into programming. So like right now, are you on an exploratory phase? Or are you yeah, what's life been like since you decided I'm done with this?
It's been a bit of both. So I've continued on with SREPath.com, which is
Mhm.
about site reliability engineering, and had you on, and that was a very popular episode. People
Oh,
loved it.
yay.
They loved your insights
I'm
about
so glad.
open telemetry, because that's a hot topic in this space. I mean, in terms of
Totally.
platform engineering, DevOps, SRE, everyone's talking about it right now. And um, other tan that, studying JavaScript again, a very long time after I've last touched it. But it's been fun learning about all kinds of aspects of a programming language again, after having been so knee deep in non-technical technical stuff. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah.
It's been exhilarating, actually. Yeah, it's fun to learn.
It's the techie in you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm so glad I got a MacBook for this, because I don't think I would have enjoyed. I would not have
Kinder,
enjoyed
gentler.
doing this on a on a Windows. No, no,
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think it makes for a much more pleasurable development experience.
100%.
So, are you happy then with your decision to have made the exit from corporate life onto the to the more creative sphere of software?
So far, so good. That's all I can say about it, because it's definitely not as consistent. It's not as predictable. Income's definitely one of those things that's very unpredictable, but that's fine. I think it's one of those things that you have to do. Like, I have been a manager since the age of 22.
Oh my god, that is
Yeah.
very early on. Wow.
Yeah. So for me, actually, for most of my adult life, having only done that,
Yeah.
it is like, I need to do this.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so cool that you've made this transition, this pivot, because, it is so scary to make such a major pivot, no matter what stage you are in your life, but especially if you've been doing one thing for like such a long period of time, can be absolutely terrifying. And you don't know, like, I mean, if we knew what the future held, we'd all be rich, but it's like so many unknowns, right? With making a huge career leap. But I think also knowing deep in your heart that it's time for a change is such a great motivation to change.
And I definitely knew that. So the stars aligned, as I said before, and just had to do it.
That's awesome. Hats off to you. I think it's so cool when folks just move out of their comfort zone into like following following a passion onto greener pastures, knowing that there's like something else out there that could possibly make you happier. And it sounds like it has made you happier, which is cool.
Oh, absolutely. It has made me appreciate, though, what it is like to be an early career. Well, I still haven't got a career in this next sphere, right? But it's made me think more about what it's like to be an early career or even pre-career person getting into a space. It's like so many things you got to learn, so many ways you got to organize yourself. And I feel like I'm very organized now because
Yeah.
that's my expertise, my area of
Yeah.
managing myself, managing my ability
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do inordinate amounts of work in shorter and shorter periods of time. And that's a skill that a lot of people don't have because early career professionals are generally 18 to 25. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so that's something that I am exploring as well to see, can I share some insights with them to help them develop their technical skills faster and also take on some soft skills, which is so important in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we should never ever ever underestimate the importance of the soft skills. I know it's like so easy to get, if you're a technical person, get caught up in the technology and that's gonna, help you coast through your career, but it's totally not. I mean, we scoff at the idea of having to take English in school, but like sorry to say, but communication is such an important aspect of the software industry. And if you're unable to communicate effectively, then you might as well just be a crappy coder because, you know, it's not going to get you super far, unfortunately. So, yeah.
So one of the projects I'm doing right now is called the Odin project, and that's about
Mhm.
essentially learning how to use GitHub and HTML and CSS and everything from scratch. And I'm following it to the T. I am not skipping
Yeah.
any steps. That is the worst thing you can do to say, hey, I already know this. I can skip it.
It's so true.
People do it so often. I used to do it so
Oh, yeah.
often.
Oh
At
my
this time,
God. So
mm,
guilty of it.
I think we all are. Um, so following that, I have learned that it's so important to take every step, and also there was one aspect of Project Odin I wanted to mention, but it'll come to me later, hopefully.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Now, having spent just circling back on the corporate aspect of
Hmm. Sure.
a chunk of your career, what would you say was for someone who's been in the corporate life for so long, how would you how would you describe it? What are some of the ups and the downs?
So the ups would definitely be power, which you don't realize you have until much later, and then you have to realize that you have to exercise it judiciously. I didn't say that right. Judicious. Okay, that's one of my fail words. Jud- People used
No
to say it
worries.
so often in my space, like judiciously. Yes, there
There
you
you
go.
go.
Finally got it. Yeah, got there eventually. So that's one of the things. It's like when you are in this space, it's a strong structure. It's very different to how people like to think in tech teams, where it's a more flatter structure. You can talk about problems. Generally, you can talk about problems more readily. I oversaw a few tech teams over the years, and generally, they would just express their opinions to me as is. And that was quite refreshing because I was so used to people sugarcoating things and
Oh
people
my god.
wanting to put their best foot forward, for example, that it just was refreshing to work in that kind of environment. Whereas there's a lot of formality. in
Yes.
a more rigid corporate structure, I would say. So
Yeah.
I did at times find it stifling, but then it's just one of the things. Once you're in the system, you just got to keep rolling. You just keep moving. It's like, it's like a routine. You get that morning coffee. You have that coffee at 11 a.m. You have that coffee at 2 p.m. I cut out coffee after that. I realized how it became a part of life, how you're
Yeah.
actually just in that system going through that routine of a rigid structure. And obviously, you have to have some structure in tech work, but there's definitely a lot more in a more formal environment.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think for me the most jarring thing was, first of all, like in corporate world, they do not like you swearing.
No,
I got in trouble for swearing. Oh my god. I got into so much trouble for swearing, and I'm like, really? So I very much appreciate being in a workplace where I can swear freely because I am a swearer. So that was number one for me. Number two was like, you must respect the hierarchy. None of this, like, you can't go to your skip level manager for a thing. You must resolve it with your direct manager. And oh my God, I got in shit for like insubordination. I'm like, I just want to get stuff done. I don't care who I have to go through. I just want to do my job and do right by the company. And so that was definitely something that I got burned on in my career, which, lesson learned for the corporate world. Do not do that.
sometimes doing the right thing is not doing the right thing in that
Yes.
environment.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Yeah, and that is a great way of putting it, which makes it very difficult to navigate that kind of environment if your mind isn't compatible with that mindset of working. And I don't think mine was. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm not in like a big stuffy corporate environment anymore.
Absolutely. I don't want to knock it completely as either myself
Mhm.
because there are some people who thrive in that environment and it
Oh
works really
yeah,
well for
yeah.
them. It didn't work for me, but I still did it. If it makes any
Yeah,
sense.
yep. I feel you. I mean, same thing. I was in a large corporate environment for a chunk of my career, and then I discovered like, wait, there's other stuff out there. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
But I totally
exactly.
agree with you. I mean, it works for some people, different strokes for different folks. People are successful in their own different ways, and it's cool to see how different people thrive in different environments. Definitely not for me though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ash, for geeking out with us today. Y'all don't forget to check the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media.
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Vilela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout. Hey there, Geeking Out fans! We're taking a 2-week break as I prepare for CubeCon in Paris. We'll be back with a brand new episode on Tuesday, April 2nd. Until then, peace out and geek out.